Well, to examine Europe's headaches and what to do about them, we've got the Chief Executive of the European Policy Centre with us, Hans Martens. Hans, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
All right, now, I know we were speaking when you arrived here, and you say, well, there's so much problems that the EU has to deal with.
Yeah.
Possibly Greece is not what they should be focusing on at all.
It is really a pity, because this is a fairly insignificant economic problem, and there were bigger things, more long-term things to deal with. And I would really, but I mean, I want them to deal with the bigger issues, of the, making Europe relevant, improving Europe's competitiveness, the new 2020 program, because nobody really took the Lisbon agenda seriously. If the Greeks had done that 5 or 6 years ago, tried to move up the scale, they wouldn't have been in the situation they're in now. So it's really about modernizing Europe. But of course, they're always distracted by these short-term issues, because now markets are getting hysterical about Greece.
But Hans, exactly, that's exactly what I was going to ask you. Markets are getting hysterical.
Yeah,
now you say
they will always get
distracted.
hysterical about something, right?
But
and now
the
it's
euro's
Greece, right?
falling. Now
Yeah.
that may not be a bad thing,
No,
but this
that's
is
true.
a structural problem that Greece needs to deal with.
But of course it is. But I mean, you'll be talking a lot about, deficits, because we were all happy a couple of years ago when the government was spending money rescuing this bank, stimulating the economy, and now it's payback time. Look at the US, look at the UK. I mean, we have huge deficits all over the place. But the problem with Greece is that they don't only have a big deficit, they have a big debt, right? And they haven't really improved their competitiveness. So that is why Greece in itself is a problem, but it's not a big economic problem. It's only 3% of the Eurozone.
No, but what I understand it is that it's a huge problem because it's linked to the other Eurozone. So it can bring
fine.
effectively the whole Eurozone down.
But what I said, Francine, is not a big economic problem, but it's a big political problem, because you need to find a solution which is also not just giving a carte blanche to everybody else, to just relax, right? So you need to be tight on this. And I think we can find a solution this weekend. And I want to tell you that I think we should do that and do it fairly quickly.
Through
and
the
get
IMF.
on with and get on with the long-term thing. And I can't see any other solutions than the IMF. Think about it, the Eurozone have a lot of protests in the IMF, a lot of influence there, which might be different in the future. But we do, and IMF is there for doing those kind of things. But you cannot do it unless you have an agreement with the Eurozone about this, supported by some bilateral arrangements. But putting up a European Monetary Fund at this point, not possible.
You say a lot of links with the IMF because the head of the IMF is a Frenchman?
No, I was saying because traditionally Europe has big voters in the IMF. I mean, an IMF is there to do these kind of things. And by the way, it's always politically convenient to have all these ugly experts, coming in from Washington to dictate rather than do it, on a friend-to-friend basis.
But the big concern was that actually, if you get the IMF, they're going to ask possibly Greece to restructure their debt, and so you'll have what, France, Germany holds, these Greek bonds, actually fall to the floor.
Yeah, but well, I mean, what is the alternative? I mean, we can't just let the markets get on with this. We need to basically, put a stop to it and get on with the other parts of the agenda, because I don't want to be just talking about the short term, because there is a long-term agenda for here, and we cannot every time there is a European summit be distracted about these things, right? We need to get some direction of Europe. There's also climate and energy issues, okay?
Portugal, Spain, Italy, are they going to be the next Greeks?
No, listen, there's a big difference here. If you look, this is not about deficit. This is about, the present, the past, and the future, right? And it's bad for Greece, I admit that. They have presently a big deficit, they had a big debt, that's the part, and they don't have too good prospects. Portugal is more or less in the same situation. Spain is completely different, because the debt situation is much, much nicer in Spain, and they actually use some of the good years to improve their public finance.
But they have
had
a stronger
surplus.
recession because of the construction.
Yeah, but I think they also have, they can rebound. I believe a lot in the Spanish economy as such. And if you talk about Italy, I would say, okay, they didn't have a big deficit out of this crisis, but they have a big debt problem to deal with in the future. But you can't compare. I think the closest you can get to Greece is actually Portugal, if you look at the figures, okay?
And Hans, you were telling me that actually what you're concerned about is the debt in the UK and the US. That's the real concern
I'm
we
really,
should be
no, but
focusing on.
volume-wise, we're talking about, the US and the UK debt are percentage-wise more or less the same as Greece. Don't forget that, okay? But volume-wise, it is really huge, right? And I think over the coming years, you will be doing show after show about, issues related to this, because it can create inflation. It will push up the interest rates, which you've seen in the US and so on. I mean, it is financing time. It's payback time. Sorry.
Hans, we had a former NPC member speaking to Bloomberg just a couple of days ago. They said, okay, so the UK may lose its AAA rating, so what?
Yeah, okay. But I mean, then people will start attacking the pound, and they'll have a go at that. A lot of things could happen. What I'm basically saying is the huge financing burden now cannot avoid having a negative influence on the interest rate. That means put them up.
Okay, bottom line, are we going to have a resolution for Greece now?
I really hope so, and I believe so. And I think it will be with the IMF involved.
All right, Hans, great to speak to you. Thank you so much, Hans Martens.